Hey, Huckster here. I made a comment recently to a YouTube user about Damascus. He seems to believe that Damascus in our future is going to be destroyed because of the prophecy of Isaiah 17. So what does other let me find the King James Version here before us go any further. That's what most people read is the King James. So make it a little easier for you to understand. In Zechariah 9, verse 1 says, "The burden of the word of the Lord in the land of Hadrach and Damascus shall be the rest thereof, when the eyes of man, as of all the tribes of Israel, shall be toward the Lord." So here is speaking of the burden of Damascus. It's also a prophecy of destruction of Damascus. So in Isaiah 17, 1 through 3, the burden of Damascus, "Behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be ruinous heap. The cities of Aroer, A-R-O-E-R, are forsaken. They shall be for flocks. We shall lie down, and none shall make them afraid. The fortress also shall cease from Ephraim, and the kingdom from Damascus." It says, "And the kingdom from Damascus, and the remnant of Syria. And they shall be as the glory of the children of Israel, saith the Lord of hosts." Jeremiah, in chapter 49, verse 23 through 27, says, "Concerning Damascus, Hamath is found confounded, and Arpad, for they have heard evil tidings. They are faint-hearted. There is sorrow on the sea. It cannot be quiet. Damascus is waxed feeble, and turneth herself to flee, and fear hath seized on her. Anguish and sorrows have taken her as a woman in travail. How is the city of praise not left, the city of my joy? Therefore her young men shall fall in her streets, and all the men of war shall be cut off in that day, saith the Lord of hosts. And I will kindle a fire in the wall of Damascus, and it shall consume the palaces of Ben-Hadad." So when did the palaces of Ben-Hadad was a ruler in Damascus, and so when was this that Ben-Hadad ruled in Damascus? So we look at a little history, and Ben-Hadad ruled from, the task of restoring Israelite fortunes were reserved for Joahaz, the 12th king of Israel, from 801 to 786 BC, who took again out of the hand of Ben-Hadad, the son of Hazael, the cities which he had taken out of the land of Joahaz, his father, by war. 3 times did Joash smite him, and recovered the cities of Israel. So Ben-Hadad was around 800, or around the 800 to 786 BC. So a couple of hundred years, or maybe 100 years after that, we had Tiglath-Pileser the third, and history describes the fall of Damascus. Ahaz's plea for aid against Israel and Damascus excuse me, must have fitted in well with Tiglath-Pileser's own ambition in Syria and Palestine. His response, certainly dictated by perceived self-interest, took the form of a campaign to Philistia, which was Palestine, in 734 BC. It was a move evidently aimed at splitting the Allies, isolating Damascus, opening a way through northern Israel to the coastal plain, and affecting contact with Ahaz. In all probability, it was on this exposition to the Philistine plain that Tiglath-Pileser III overran Israel, and he took a lot of cities in between there and all the land of Naphtali. You find this in 2 Kings chapter 15, and deported the inhabitants to Assyria. Tiglath-Pileser was the king of Assyria. Not Syria, but Assyria. The emperor's own record of the events that happened around 734 BC leaves the exact date is a little uncertain, but it was recorded that in the long siege of Damascus, of which little is known, for not even Tiglath-Pileser's description of it is extant, the king of Samah, a loyal Syrian tributary of the Assyrian monarch, sacrificed his life. The fact supplies a hint of just how intense the struggle was. The city fell in 732 BC, making due allowance for hyperbole on the part of the Assyrian records. The destruction of the region around Damascus must have been horrendous, according to historical records. Tiglath-Pileser reports that 591 towns of the 16 districts of Aram I destroyed like mounds left by a flood. Hadurah, the father's house of Rezin of Aram, where he was born, I besieged, I captured 800 people together with their possessions I carried off. A concise, comprehensive biblical notice closely links the fall of Damascus with Ahaz's appeal and payment of tribute to Tiglath-Pileser's, and the king of Assyria listened to him and went up against Damascus and took it, and carried its people captive to Kir, and killed Rezin. The death of this last Aramean king, who ruled for almost The Armenians ruled for almost 2 centuries at Damascus. And they lived in those palaces of Ben-Hadad. And now we have Pileser, Tiglath-Pileser killing the king of Damascus, Rezin. And the death of this last Aramean king, who ruled for almost 200 centuries at Damascus, was reported on the tablet of Tiglath-Pileser. And that's history. But unfortunately, there's not enough documents. A lot of documents were lost without leaving a trace of the fate of Damascus, so it's not really recorded that Damascus ceased to be a city at that time. When Rezin's death, the Aramaic kingdom of Damascus passed away forever. So what does it say about the kingdom? Shall cease. The fortress also shall cease from Ephraim, and the kingdom from Damascus. When that king, Rezin, was destroyed, was killed, the Aramaic kingdom of Damascus passed away forever. Tiglath-Pileser's far-reaching conquest and ruthless administration made him master of all the Westland. In a list of his western tributaries, he mentions among many others the king of Gebal and Arvad and the Mediterranean coast, the king of Hamath, Ammon, Moab, Ashkelon, and many, many others. Tiglath-Pileser also controlled Israel. All this, the Assyrian emperor placed Hosea on the throne in 2 Kings 15:30, obligating him to pay heavy tribute to Assyria. This also was duly recorded in the imperial inscriptions. All this is in history, and it lines up with Zechariah, Isaiah, and Jeremiah. Jeremiah concerning Damascus: Hamath is confounded, and Arpad, for they have heard evil tidings, for they are faint-hearted. There is sorrow on the sea, it cannot be quiet. Damascus is waxed feeble, and turneth herself to flee, and fear hath seized her. Anguish and sorrow have taken her, as a woman in travail. It says, I will kindle a fire in the wall of Damascus, and it shall consume the palaces of Ben-Hadad. In Amos, thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Damascus, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have threshed Gilead with threshing instruments of iron. But I will send a fire into the house of Hazael, which shall devour the palaces of Ben-Hadad. I will break also the bar of Damascus, and cut off the inhabitants from the plain of Avon, and him that holdeth the scepter from the house of Eden, and the people of Syria shall go into captivity unto Kir, saith the Lord. This actually happened 700 to 800 BC. To say it's in our future is like trying to change what prophecy says. And to say, as a lot of Christians do, that God has given them this special knowledge of this future, in our future, destruction of Damascus as being a fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy, is a stretch, in my opinion. Well, that's just my opinion of, and I know there's a lot more to this Damascus, the burden of Damascus, but I was just trying to touch on a few highlights from biblical to historical writings that show that Damascus, at that time, in that day, ceased to be a city as prophesied.